Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Social Security Talk. I am your host, Marc Kiner, in my nice holiday festive sweater, which I just received a couple of days ago. It's a beautiful day in Cincinnati, Ohio. I believe it's going to be in the 50s next week, so we're excited about that. We're not going to have a white Christmas, that's for sure. This podcast is brought to you by the National Social Security Advisors Certificate Program. We offer our training 3 ways: in-person classes, live webinars, and taped on-demand videos. For information about our education, please go to our website, premiernssa.com. Send me an email, mkiner@mypremierplan.com, or give me a buzz, 513-247-0526. Now that is out of the way, Bill and I are going to talk about the Social Security Trust Fund and what the future looks like. Welcome, Bill, to our podcast.
Hello, Mark. It's great to be back here. I really enjoyed doing this, and I think you have a great show. So,
Bill,
thanks.
You're with Security Mutual Life. Am I not? Am I correct?
That's correct.
Binghamton, New York. Did I pronounce that right?
Binghamton, yes.
And how many people live there? What's the population of that city?
Binghamton's a city, but I don't think it's in the top 10 biggest cities in New York State. So it's not a huge place, but it's a warm, it's a comfortable place to be. So
okay, your position there is Senior Financial Services Consultant.
Correct.
What does that mean? That's a pretty big title. I can't really put that all together.
Well, I've been with Security Mutual now for about 8.5 years.
Okay.
And, I work in the marketing department, but of course, Social Security is my specialty, and we do a lot of Social Security marketing through the company.
Okay, very good.
So, yeah.
Bill, Social Security is pretty dear to my heart. You could imagine. I started in the Social Security business back in 2010. That's when I joined forces with my partner, Jim Blair. Jim worked for SSA for 35 years, and I'm a former CPA. And right. At that point, Bill, we wanted to help folks across the country to maximize their benefits. But now we educate advisors across the country. So, Bill, let's talk about the solvency of the Social Security Trust Fund. It's $2.8 trillion as of the end of 2022. I'm not sure what it is today, but I'm sure it's less than that. Bill, do you have a figure from something more current?
No, I mean they publish that figure usually where it gets a lot of media publicity is in the springtime when the trustees issue their annual report, and that's when you hear a lot of doom and gloom about what's going to happen to the trust fund and they're going bust and all this other stuff, and that's what concerns me more than anything else, Mark, because what happens is consumers see that without really reading it in detail, not really understanding it. And frankly, some of the media coverage gets to be a little bit irresponsible.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And yeah, it absolutely is crazy. And they seem to think that people seem to think that Social Security is going to go all the way down to zero, and you're not going to get any benefits past a certain date. I believe as of the last trustees report, it was 2035. And they said the $2.8 trillion was going to go down to zero. That doesn't mean you're not going to get a Social Security benefit. What it means is if nothing is done between now and then, it's going to go down, they estimate, by about 20%. So that's a far cry from losing your Social Security benefit completely.
So Bill, let's say that's my situation. I'm collecting my benefits currently. I started at my full retirement age, which was June of last year. I was born in 56, so that was 66 and 4 months. So if nothing is done, Bill, to make the system more solvent, when this trust fund is gone, I understand, or I believe I understand, that my benefit will be cut by that 20% figure you just alluded to not long ago. So I will lose 20% benefits right off the bat. Do we really expect that to materialize, Bill?
Well, look, Mark, I am not a Washington insider, and I'm not a macroeconomist, but do I think that's going to happen? My gut tells me no. My gut tells you they're going to do something to fix this problem. And people don't understand that we've dealt with this issue before in the past. And around 1982 or 1983, um, the trust fund at that point got down almost to zero, and the government had to step in, and they did step in, and they did fix the program. Now, at the time they fixed it, they said it was going to be about 75 years, and it was solid for the next 75 years. They're going to be just a little bit short of the 75 years now, but they did solve the problem. But the issue was it had to get pretty bad before they actually went in and did something. And if my best guess is that if it keeps going the way it is, at some point they're going to step in, but it's not going to be this year. It's not going to be next year, but it's going to be in a few years as we get closer to that 2035 date.
Probably sometime in the early 2030s, Bill, I would expect. I still don't expect anything to happen between now and 2030. Congress doesn't act that quickly now, do they? So, Bill, there are really just two ways in my mind to make the system more solvent. One would be increase taxes and, of course, reduce benefits. So you and I both believe that Congress will make changes so those folks receiving benefits will not see a 20% reduction when that trust fund is gone. But let's address one thing before we talk about potential changes, Bill, because we get this question all the time. I'm sure you do too. Social Security will always be around. Well, you can never say always. However, more than $1 trillion comes in every year in form of FICA tax, self-employment tax, taxes collected on tax returns for the taxation of benefits, and interest income on U.S. bonds that the Social Security Trust holds. So over $1 trillion comes in each year, and that money will be used to be paid out whenever the trust fund is gone. What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
Yeah, well, that's where the 80% figure comes from. Basically, what they're saying is that they collect 80% of what they're going to be collecting 80% of what they pay out just from payroll taxes that come from people's wages right now. So it gets back to how are they going to make up that other 20%? You never know, but I just don't see how they're just going to allow Social Security benefits to go down by 20%. I think that would cause rioting in some places.
It sure would be.
It seems unlikely to me that that's going to happen.
So what do you foresee then? What are your thoughts about strengthening the trust fund?
Well, I think if you went back to what happened the last time, they did a combination of those two things that you were basically talking about. Number one, increasing the payroll tax, and number two, and I'll phrase it differently from what you said. You said reducing benefits. It depends on which side of the aisle you're on. Some people say it's reducing benefits. Some people say it's raising the full retirement age. And that's more of a political discussion than anything else. From my personal point of view, people live a lot longer than they used to. And when Social Security started back in the 1930s, full retirement age was 65 years old. Now, in a few years from now, it's going to be age 67. Well, life expectancy is gone up over the decades by more than just 2 years, a lot more than just 2 years. So I think it's reasonable to refer to it as raising full retirement age. Now, you are right in the sense that it is a cut in benefits regardless of what age you collect. For example, if your full retirement age is 65 and you collect at 62, you're only collecting 3 years early. Whereas if your full retirement age is age 67, now you're not collecting 3 years early, you're collecting 5 years earlier. And there's going to be a bigger actuarial reduction. And it works the same way on the other side. So, yeah, it is a benefit cut, but it's based on the reality that people are just living longer now. So that seems to be one of the one of the options. As far as the other big option goes, which is raising the tax, I suppose there's two different ways you can do it. Currently, as of 2024, it's 6.2% of your wages up to $168,600. And then, of course, the employer pays an additional 6.2%. You could either raise that percentage or raise the wage base, which is probably the more likely of the two, I would think. Raise the wage base above the $162,600. That is, I think, a good possibility that that's going to happen. Now, there's a bit of a political issue with that too, though. I think when it seems like when the people in Washington start talking about Social Security, they want you to believe that this is a retirement plan rather than an entitlement program. You see what I'm saying? Now, because of that, if they were to increase that wage base, it's harder to sell it as a retirement plan because you're basically saying to people over that wage base, we're going to increase your Social Security withholding, but you might not get anything back in terms of an increased retirement benefit. So that's the political issue that seems to be occurring with that.
So, Bill, let's address both those topics. Number one, you do foresee an increase in the full retirement age. I do too. Current level is 67 for people born in 1960 or later. I do visualize that's going to increase to 69 or 70. However, though, it doesn't happen overnight. It could take 20 years, 25 years to go up that high. And so younger folks like our engineer here, Aaron, probably will see a full retirement age of 70. So that's when he'll collect his full benefit. The other item, though, like you said, is the tax assessed against the FICA wage cap. I guess it's both the same thing. Like you said, Bill, currently $168,600. I don't expect Congress to raise the percentage of 6.2% because that would be, I hope I'm using this right, progressive. It would affect lower earners more. Am I using the right term there, Bill?
Regressive, I think, is what you mean.
Regressive. Yeah. Okay, fine.
I think it's regressive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's regressive. It would hurt the lower earner folks more. I do expect the 168.6 to go up each year, like it does. Is based on normal wage inflation, and I do expect, if it goes up to, let's just say 170 next year, in 2025, that is. Folks will see a benefit based on $170,000. That's the amount they paid FICA tax in. However, though, if there are some proposals in Congress to allow it to continue to couple proposals in Congress would say we're going to tax $250,000. And in that situation, quite possibly, some of those additional earnings may not be a factor in computing your benefits. So like you said, Bill, you pay the additional FICA taxes, but you just won't see a benefit increase. There's another proposal in Congress which will continue the normal annual increases and stop it at whatever that increase is, for example, 168.6 in 2024, and then start up again at maybe $250,000.
Right.
So you pay the 6.2% on everything you earn starting at $250 and beyond, and that income will not be included in the benefit calculation. So a higher earner will pay more FICA taxes, but we'll see no increase in the Social Security benefit. Thoughts?
Yeah, like I said, the last time it was a combination of those two things with different numbers, of course. But I think in order to please both sides and actually solve the problem, they're going to have to do a combination of those two things. Now, there have been other suggestions as well. I just saw this week in the Wall Street Journal, there was an op-ed by Phil Gramm, who was a former senator, and he suggested that part of the way to solve this would be to allow the trust fund to invest in something other than government bonds.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting possibility. And he pointed out that, the trust fund today would be a lot better off if they had allowed that to happen years ago. So that's another possibility. And I know there's some people are also talking about means testing of benefits as well, which is another thing that could conceivably happen, where if you make a certain amount of money, you make over a certain amount, then you're just not going to get that Social Security benefit, even though you may have otherwise been entitled to it. So,
Bill, do you think Warren Buffett deserves his Social Security benefit?
I think he paid into it, and he was sold on the promise of paying into it that he was going to get something back for it. So that's where it gets to be a little bit dicey as far as whether he deserves it or not.
I might not have answered the right question. Asked either. Do you think he needs the Social Security benefit? Maybe that's what I meant to ask you.
I think he's doing just fine. I don't think he has to worry about getting that Social Security benefit.
But of course, though, Berkshire Hathaway does not pay a dividend, so he does need monthly income.
Yeah, you might have to sell 0.5% of his shares or something to get the income for the rest of his life. But so be it.
I was going to ask you a question, Bill, based on that, but I kind of forgot what it was. Let's talk about the fact that so many people. Okay, no, I know what it was. Let's talk about possibly investing some of the trust fund in other investments.
Right.
I would support some type of investment in other securities. I would. Not all of it, though, because what happens when the market falls 30 to 40%, or the 2008 fiasco. I don't know how much the market fell, but it fell by quite a bit back in 2008. I guess I'd be okay, Bill, with maybe going with 25% of assets in equities, or maybe a good quality corporate bonds. What are your thoughts there?
To me, that makes perfect sense. At one point, they were talking about giving individuals the right to invest a certain percentage of Social Security into other investments. I'm not sure that would make a lot of sense, because when you put money into Social Security, that doesn't mean it goes into a specific account for you. It goes
not
into
my account, Bill.
Yeah, it goes into a big pot of money.
Yeah.
And if the trustees of the Social Security Trust Fund had the option to take a percentage of that money and put it in to something other than government bonds. Right now, that's all they can do. They have a certain set of non-marketable government securities, bonds, and that's all they could spend the money on. That's all they can invest the money in.
Yeah.
And part of the issue that we have now, maybe because of the fact that interest rates have been low for a number of years, and they come back up recently, but they were low for a long time, and the trust fund wasn't making a lot of money on its investments because of that. So it is. I think, to me, it's almost a no-brainer to allow them to invest in.
I know I think it was during the Bush administration, the younger Bush administration, that it was really being talked about doing some private investments. I believe it was at that time. And one of the comments I've heard, if people were able to allocate their own Social Security funds into investments, they might try to be a little more aggressive, knowing that if they didn't succeed, there'd be a government bailout for them along the way. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I don't want to manage my own investments inside my Social Security account. U.S. government, though, if they want, Social Security Administration would make better to do it for as a whole than individual folks. The final, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the government is explicit, and if you understand where the money goes, it ain't your money. All right, it's not your account. Okay, it's their money, and they're going to pay you, and they don't have to pay you, but it's their money, and you don't have the right to decide where that money goes.
The final topic I want to talk about today, Bill, is this an entitlement? There are two, several entitlement programs out there. We always hear Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, so forth and so on. Does Social Security belong in that discussion?
I think the discussion has evolved over the last 40 or 50 years on that. I think it's probably more of an entitlement now than it was back then. And that's almost inevitable, I think, because what happens is that over time, um, it's um, it's an economic theory I have, Mark. I refer to it as uh, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Because what happens is over time, if any government program, it seems like if it's around for a long time and if it's successful, which Social Security is, it's inevitable that the government is going to go in there and they're going to make tweaks to it and they're going to change it. And basically they're going to talk about, well, what about disabled people? We should make it better and fairer for disabled people, or should we increase children's benefits, and so on and so on. So each of those kind of tilts it a little bit more, I think, away from a retirement plan and more towards an entitlement program. So that's the direction we've been going for a long time now, I think.
Yeah, Bill, I always fight with myself on that one issue. So many people like you do call it an entitlement program. I guess I differ a little bit because people do pay into the system, and it's not like Medicaid. We don't pay into Medicaid directly, and Medicare you do pay into Medicare, but not all. The government does subsidize some of that. So I understand what you're saying. Personally, I don't know if I call it an entitlement program, but let me say one more thing on that too. If the U.S. U.S. Treasury did not take the trust fund assets, U.S. Treasury would have $3 trillion more in debt. $3 trillion. So what's the current debt level? About $33 trillion, something like that?
Yeah, it's gone up in the past few years.
It goes up every day.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think it's kind of in that range. So it would be $3 trillion higher. So now what's going on now is, since we're the amount of benefits going out does exceed the money coming in, we need to cash in those bonds. So now the U.S. Treasury is paying the piper to some extent.
Yeah.
And in theory, the Social Security program is self-contained. They're not allowed to take out any debt to pay benefits. It has to be all self-contained. I don't think people in Congress understand that. They probably do. I don't know. Bill, I want to thank you so much.
I agree.
Okay, I'm listening.
Just one last comment, Mark. I hear people sometimes talking about the government raiding the trust fund. To me, that's just a lot of nonsense. Since the beginning, they've only been able to invest in one thing, and that's the way they've done it.
I know.
I think
that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're raiding it there, but that's the law. They take what's left over, and the Social Security Trust Fund now owns a whole bunch of U.S. securities. I agree. Bill, this discussion has been fascinating. We can talk about the solvency of the Social Security Trust Funds for so much longer, but I do know one thing, though. At the end of the day, the Social Security program is not going away. The trust fund will be gone sometime down the road, and Congress will have to make some changes to make it more solvent. But those changes will more likely than not just affect the younger folks and not somebody receiving benefits or in that range like I am, and like you.
Yeah.
I don't know your age, but I'll be 68 in February. So, and
I'm one of those first group of people. I was born in 1960, so I'm the first group of people that has a full retirement age of 67.
Good for you. A lot of our clients now do have a full retirement age of 67, Bill. They really do. Bill, any final comments you'd like to make?
Well, the only thing I would throw out to you, Mark, is something, if anybody who's listening is interested, I would point you to the website of the Committee for a Responsible Budget, CFRB.org. They have an interesting little modeling thing that you can do there. They are a Washington-based think tank who studied the issue quite a bit. And if you ever wanted to know what it would be like if you were king of the world and you could figure out which option best solves the problem, you can go in there and play with it. You can say, all right, I want to increase the tax or I want to increase the age, and it'll show you the effect that it will have and whether you can solve the problem on your own. So I think that's an interesting spot to take a look.
Will you give that cite another mention so Aaron can put that on the screen?
Sure. It's cfrb.org/Social Security Reformer.
Thank you, Bill. I will go ahead and pull that down and read it over the weekend. Thank you so much, Bill Rainaldi. I appreciate the discussion on the solvency of the Social Security Trust Fund. Appreciate it, Bill. Take care now.
Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Bye, everybody.